Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. Well, good morning, good afternoon from wherever in the world you are watching us live today on Black Mental Health Matters. And today we are exploring the topic of mental health intervention for Black fathers. And I have some amazing minds here with me today to help walk us through what is some of the challenges and also some of the solutions that we can find to help our Black fathers. My name is Dolores McKenzie. I'm an author, I'm a financial educator, and international transformational speaker. And my walk with mental health started a few years ago when before I went into financial services, I worked in the hospital in a supportive role. And I understand what it means to have that stigma about mental health because I had it the same way. When I was offered a position on the mental health unit, I hesitated because of my mindset, what I had thought about mental health before. And amazingly, I went. It took me 3 months to accept a full time position. And when I did, I stayed there for 6 years and I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and hence I was being prepared and didn't even know it. You know, as a way of dealing with different mental health issues that I would come across in my lifetime. So today we are joined by an amazing panel, and I will introduce my guests here, and then we'll get into the meat of things. We have with us Dr. Oberi Cartman, and I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Cartman. He is a father, a son, uncle, and thinker, therapist, photographer, drummer, and a grassroots mental health advocate. Dr. Cartman has served as professor of psychology at Georgia State University and Carthage Center for Inner City Studies at Northeastern University. He wrote a critical acclaimed book for young Black men about manhood and relationships, which was recently expanded into the hip hop based cultural identity rites of passage curriculum called Manifest. That is being implemented in juvenile detention centers, schools, and in private community settings. Dr. Cartman is the current president of the Chicago Association of Black Psychologists. He works locally doing programs, program evaluation, and other community psychology services with HELP LLC, which is Healing, Empowering, and Learning Professionals. He works nationally as a training consultant with the National Cares Mentoring Organization. Dr. Cartman is currently completing his second book and is about Black spirituality, which will be released this year. So welcome, Dr. Cartman, to the Black Mental Health Show. And we also have David Rachel, the third. David Rachel the third. Yes, he is CEO of Health Fit. Since 2001, David has established a reputation for innovative strategies and success both in the medical and fitness industry, and utilizes knowledge acquired in his university studies in recreational therapy and a master's in business administration in healthcare. David's lifetime commitment to engage, educate, and empower clients to understand their medical and health condition has led to success of thousands of clients and patients from his use of exercise and medicine. And we'll be joined later by another guest. But, gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to this amazing topic. And before I get into some of the questions that we'll address, I just want to send some love out this morning to the Sudanese community here in Calgary. The Sudanese community have lost a gentleman who's a father, a brother, a son, and a husband who had some mental health challenges, and a very unfortunate situation. He lost his life, and also I'm sending out some love to the family and worldwide community of South Africa in mourning the loss of Ricky Rick as well. And when we look at what's going on around us, we wonder sometimes, and I wonder sometimes, and you can chime in. I'll let you chime in a little bit, but it kind of take me back to my days in mental health, and they talk about the Mental Health Act. And what I find is, even though I kind of look at the Mental Health Act in different areas of the world, and they seem to have the similar thread, which is to protect. But in my mind, in some cases, they've criminalized that act. And, I don't know if any of you feel the same way, but what is it that we can really do before it gets to that stage? Because when the act is put in place, it is being forced. It's by force that people are being getting treatment. But what are some of the things that we can really do before, in terms of intervention, before it gets to that stage when it has to be forced on someone? And I could start with you, Dr. Cartman, and then we go to David. Yeah.
Well, good morning, and thank you again for this invitation and for hosting this really important topic. I'm very also glad to meet you, Brother David. Looking forward to this conversation. But to the question of what we can do, I mean, I'm a very big advocate of starting where you are, starting where you have access and influence. And if we're talking about fathers, that begins with your children. And there's a lot of power that Black men have in the home that sometimes we struggle with for domestic problems, and we get caught up in legal stuff, and we have not done a good job of maintaining a good sense of principles around co-parenting, even if you're married or not married. And so I think that I begin in this fatherhood conversation about doing what we need to do in communities to organize our family structure better. I'm not saying everybody got to get married. This ain't an old school kind of a thing, but whatever the arrangements you have to prioritize children so that we can protect their mental health, so that we can sort of model sort of this emotional connection, this awareness of these systems in place, so that we can, as fathers, begin to take the power that we have in that sphere to transform the lives of the children that are coming, behind us. And most fathers know that if you live in communities, that you're not just talking about your own biological children. If you just stay in your own physical house, then the boy on the block might cause harm if you're not considering his impact and trying to mentor him or reach out to him or be a resource to him. So when we think of fathers, we often think of the children in the schools that our children go to, our sons' friends. So this ecosystem of children that we have influence over. I think that there's lots of ways we don't have a lot of power. Wherever you at in the world, Black people are on the bottom of lots of systems. We're struggling for survival. We grieving the losses that you mentioned even in the morning. So like, there's so many things that are happening, and on top of sort of the generations of trauma we've experienced, on top of the continued systemic and disinvestment in the communities we find ourselves in, all of that being true, in my house with my sons, I am the king. And so I have to use that position to really like use that power. If anybody comes up to my sons and tells them, you're no good as a Black man, and you're not intelligent, and or you lazy, whatever it is that anybody might say, call them N words, whatever it is, their response will be, "What are you talking about? That's not what my daddy taught me." And if I leave my children vulnerable to this world, then I got to take responsibility on that. I can't blame that on the white man. I can't blame that on the systems, on the Mental Health Act. I can't blame it on no policy. That is my power and responsibility as a father to really focus my attention in on doing my work so that I can pour into them in a way that is healing, not just creating products, not just forcing them to get out and go to school and go to work and be cogs in the system, but to be whole, to be full, to see themselves as powerful themselves. Um, I realized the power I had as a parent when, like, I thought about how I shaped the worldview of my sons, like minds. My son will drive past a McDonald's, for example, and it was think, "Oh, that's poison." The world will have the commercials and say, "Hey, come here. This is what you need." But I have programmed him to think, "No, that's poison." I can have my sons think that grapes are candy, if that's what I can do whatever I want. I got that power in my house. But we give that power away too often, just by not being present, by not being intentional, by not collaborating with other fathers, or creating peer groups. I think that's the kind of work that I'm really interested in. Sort of this underground railroad of systems of fathers getting organized to create our own world within the worlds that we're forced to live in, to prepare, protect them, to send them out fortified to deal with all these other things that we're dealing with. I think that we sending our children out unprepared. So I would say start there.
That's awesome because it does take a village, as they say, right, to raise a child. Yes. And
Absolutely.
David, yeah.
I love how Dr. Cartman started us off, and listening to him. One thing that I, agree with 100% is taking a look at how our environment has actually shaped us, not only with our behavior patterns, but then also how we execute life. So if you take a look at, the different behavior patterns that he spoke about, a lot of this has actually become not just a behavior pattern aspect, but it's become more of a epigenetic aspect of it, whereas our gene expression is beginning to change. And so while our DNA says that yes, we are kings and queens and that we can act accordingly and we can rise to a certain occasion, we have certain innate abilities that are born within us, that we have this genetic predisposition to excel in a variety of aspects of life. However, the thing is, our environments are what shapes us. And so when we get into these patterns of living a certain way, being exposed to certain behaviors, it becomes a part of our gene expression, and that's through epigenetics. And so, as Dr. Cartman was explaining to us,
Mhm.
there's certain things that happen within the family. So then you take a look at going back into, and I'm not going to make this a strict slavery point of reference, but when you have, Black women all of a sudden being thrust up in a situation where men are taken away from the home. So through whatever a society, mechanism it may be. They're being withdrawn from the home, and now you have women that are being forced to actually operate in a different aspect. So with that, with young boys watching women in a different role, that expression on their genes begins to change their behavior patterns as well. So then they begin to learn a different way, and so certain aspects of their DNA either gets turned off or turned on based on seeing a dynamic that genetically wasn't supposed to be there. And so, while Dr. Cartman said, having a home where you have parents that are loving in whatever regards they may be, uh, having that available to young men helps them out in terms of shaping how they were going to respond and act accordingly when they become fathers. And so we see this vicious, perpetual cycle being just run over and over and over again, where these men, these boys who are growing into men, they aren't operating as, historically or conservatively, we can say men have in the past. Not to mention the fact that our environments is, I mean, statistically reducing the testosterone levels within men, period. So then you have this lower level of testosterone, you have this vitality that's not there, you have this gene expression that's not being fully expressed. And so now you get, instead of getting an alpha version of this male, you're getting a beta version of him. And that continues to cycle down as that is beginning to be passed down from generation to generation. And so it all goes back to understanding who we are and acting accordingly. So we all have the ability to change our environments, but if you don't know who you are, how can you change certain aspects of your life? So one of the things that I found is that just through DNA and through epigenetic studies, and of course through disc personality assessments, we can all realize who we are and really reach a whole nother level of potential that can actually break some of the cycles that Dr. Cartman spoke about and help us to begin to address not only health, but then also mental wellness as well. So, I think that we have to fundamentally and strategically take a very, very systematic approach to this, and understanding that this is something that has to start and continue on. There's no finish line.
Yeah, definitely. And you're very right, in both of you, in all of that. And your environment is where your thoughts are created from. Based, and your thoughts are what give you your beliefs, and the beliefs create those emotions in you, and that's how you act based on how you're feeling, right? So then we realize that or black men on a whole have been stereotyped, and misunderstood a lot, because whether it's because of how the system is set up, and that really carries forth through, right down it, as you said, it's piping down, and the genetic modification that's being created because of the environment as well, right? And another thing that I look at too, is when it comes to our juvenile system, and that it spills right in there, right? It spills right into the juvenile system, and a lot of things that, and recently I've been studying a little bit about the ADHD and the HDHD, whatever, right? That the behavioral part of it. But a lot of times it's misunderstood as bad behavior, and not addressed properly. And most times, our youth will end up in the juvenile system, and it's just downhill from there. you know would you guys like to speak to that, in terms of what we're what we see in terms of the percentage of juveniles that's in the system, and how can we really uh, change things so that we manage it in terms of managing behavior, and instill better behavior in our youth, so that we don't end up with those statistics.
Yeah, I can start there. I mean, the detention centers, the any system of incarceration is fundamentally designed to do the opposite of healing. They can call it rehabilitation, but they're not designed to do that. They're operating and functioning exactly as they're supposed to be a holding place to throw away generations of men, and increasingly women. So there's we can't hope that the systems that are designed to do what they're supposed to do will be softer or will, and they're doing some of that work. They're trying to paint a different picture of what the juvenile system is supposed to be about on the outside. People are talking restorative justice and juvenile detention centers, restorative practices, talking about transforming centers. But at the fundamental root of it, if we have not moved beyond this thought, this conceptualization that Black men, once they get to a certain age, are a threat to a system, and once they exhibit any behavior that could be exhibited as they could be demonstrating a certain power, a certain disruption, then that behavior needs to be thrown away. It needs to be controlled. We need to punish it. We need to cast it out. Like fundamentally, the reason I think it's important that Black men are in these kinds of spaces and Black men are getting into the health, into the wellness fields, is because we are fathers. I can go and see a young boy and have the same connection, the same sense of like, okay, this was somebody's son for real. Like I see my sons in these places, and because of that, I don't have this sort of this instinct to just to be afraid of them, to throw them away. It's a really tough moment for Black men. Like we doing, a lot of work to try to reinvent ourselves and to work on our concepts of masculinity, those kind of stuff. But it's a very much throwaway Black man moment. You say the wrong thing, you do the wrong thing, you present in the wrong way. I hear lots of Black women, even. I mean, there's a lot of Black women that still, love us and support us. And there are also lots of Black women that I hear, very easily talk about, I wish I could just get rid of all the men. And for lots of reasons, they've been harmed, and I'm certainly one for taking accountability for our mistakes and for the things that we need to do. I know Black men are doing damage, and that those moments does not mean that we are not worthy, that we're not capable of better, and that we don't need to do community work to get back to the source of what does it mean for us to be families, to hold each other collectively accountable, to be kinder to each other, to realize that we've all been damaged and we've all been traumatized. We all doing our best to kind of just make it. And we got lots of room to go. But this throwaway Black man that's supported by systems is is the essence of a lot of problems in lots of systems. It happens in schools, it happens in hospitals, it happens in clinics. There's this sense that Black men are not deserving of good care, of a second chance, of patience, of trying new strategies. If this way of teaching don't work, then maybe it's another model. That approach doesn't happen when you see a people as a problem. We treat Black people as young Black men as a problem, not as a human being that needs resources, that needs care, that needs attention, that needs compassion. They're a problem to solve. And so I'm in Chicago, so we got a big Black boy problem in Chicago. It's causing gun violence. They're going downtown now. You're losing money for it. And so to solve that problem, if at the root you think that this is a person that needs to be removed, then you put the money into the police force to solve that problem. You build more prisons, you build more detention centers. That's how you solve that problem. They don't call me and say, hey, these boys are struggling. Let's try to get at what's internally causing some disruption. Let's try to heal them because they're people. But if you don't see people as people, you see them as a product or as a problem, then the detention centers or whatever the system is, it has lots of ways to just throw them away, to try to just not think about them right now. Let's just get rid of them so we can get back to work, get back to business, and select those few of the Black men that are on college track, that are speaking right, that are saying the good stuff, that are presenting well. Let's just prop them up, and so that we can still say there's a presence of Black men, but there's a whole crew of them that have demonstrated a warrior spirit in a misdirected way without support and guidance, and that we got to get rid of those folks. So that's I see that as the function of detention centers, as prisons, as incarceration systems, and I think that's always going to be what they for. So I very fully believe in having some folk that can go in those systems, the spooks, to sit by those doors and try to do work within the systems. But I'm not a big hopeful for like let's try to reform these systems so they can be kinder to black men. I think that they're doing what they're supposed to do. We got to do what we're supposed to do on the outside to prevent them from getting in there, to protect them from the attacks that have been happening for us for a long time. And that's on us. Like that's nobody's work but us. So that's my position on that.
Mm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and jump in. Whereas, when I look at, ADD, ADHD, and how most youth are actually diagnosed with this, I mean, you got to look at the economics of how it's been set up. I mean, it all comes down to, I mean, really money, because I mean, the life cycle of a black male can be very profitable for, big business. And so you look at ADHD and things of that sort, things in which I didn't grow up with. I mean, nobody was ever diagnosed with that because we had appropriate outlets going back to environmental influencers. We had a village, so we had the opportunity for, expressing our what's within our DNA. And, with, when you look at nature versus nurture, we've now entered into a system where it's, from a society perspective, we expect kids to sit in a chair for hours upon hours. When the average adult attention span is 20 minutes, you're expecting your child to sit there. And then, of course, when they're inhibited from natural gene expression, they're now categorized as ADHD. And so, of course, that enters them into a systematic approach for tracking them, and then also furthering limiting their true potential. So then, of course, now they're not fitting the cog, because of course we know that the school system was industrialized to create employees, not employers. So now they're not fitting this cog that fits nice and neatly within the system that they've created. So now, you got to do something with this cog that doesn't fit. But yet at the same time, they're not engaging these individuals where they are, encouraging them to fully express who they are and be who they are naturally. And so if they can't fit into the system, then of course they become juveniles, and their behaviors are what, delinquent, because it doesn't fit the norm of society. And so of course then sets off a chain reaction. And so they go into the Department of Corrections. And of course, we all know that the department is not there to correct anything outside of just making sure that you're there. The average state will actually statistically will actually receive $35,000 per inmate. That's a lot of money on an annual basis to house one person for some trivial infractions. And like Dr. Cartman said, when it comes to black men, we don't get that second chance. And so once we enter the system, whether or not it's from the juvenile aspect or whether or not it's from later on in life through incarceration, we continuously become a part of the system. So then that begins to change who we are genetically, and our gene expression transfers from generation to generation. So, going back into, these, ADHD and then, the juvenile systems, I don't think either of these systems, whether or not it's juvenile system or the Department of Corrections in whatever state it may be, is actually designed to meet that person where they are, encourage them to grow, and then empower them to go out and do what they've been designed to do in life, to rise to a whole nother level, to rise to their purpose. And I just think that it's going to continue on and on and on as long as we don't have any type of mechanisms in place, going back into, what we were talking about earlier, our village, to support each person as an individual. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David. I just want to pause to welcome Dr. Lamar Shields. Dr. Shields, welcome to the conversation. We were talking about, the percentage of juveniles that's in the system right now, and based on the and they said 70% of them have been diagnosed with mental illness, and most
Yeah.
times it's the ADHD and the ADD that has been misdiagnosed, and also the behavior. So, and behaviors can be corrected with patience, and we know that, right? With patience and love, and especially when you give people an outlet for something that they are passionate about, it can
Mm.
be corrected. But instead they're thrown in the system, and and just go through the system and it blights them in so many ways. So if you would like to add to that, you can go ahead, Dr. Shields. Yeah.
Well, I think you have two dynamic brothers. I hear one brother's from Chicago, my home city. So shout out to the brother Bari from the Shy, man. Nice to meet you, brother David as well, and Sister Dolores. Thanks for having me. Man, I was over here taking notes. I like to be a student as well. Quite often, sometimes I just like to listen, take notes. I pull it out of my pad. I have a son, Mosiah Sekou Shields, who's named after the great Marcus Garvey, and I'm very mindful about giving my sons and my children strong names because I want them to be reflective of the culture that they are around. But as you all were talking, I was thinking about, the African proverb that says the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And what's happening is we also know that a child who needs the most love, Brother David, this, will ask for it in the most unloving way. And so until we help our boys develop what I call an emotional vocabulary, because we know our boys, when we look at vocabulary as it relates to people who are impoverished and people who have money, the vocabulary is much stronger for those individuals. We also know for girls have a stronger vocabulary. So when we have our little sons and we have our children, and when they're trying to articulate their message, we say, what? Use your words. But Brother Obari, when you don't have the words, especially if you're dating a sister, or if you're dating a sister and she used those words really, really fast, and it frustrates us. So our goal, one of the things is we have to help our boys develop emotional vocabulary, because again, if they don't do that, then they will do what Malcolm X teacher said when he was in Omaha, Nebraska, when he was that black boy in the class who, when the white teacher went around the room and asked all those kids, and let me pause for a second, Malcolm X at the time was the top of his class. He was the president of his class. So when that white teacher asked him, what do you want to be? When you're a kid, you jump up and you scream and say this. And he says, I want to be a lawyer. And that white teacher said to him, niggas don't become lawyers. Use your hands. And so then what did Malcolm X do? He shot up with his hands, right? What did he do? He beat women with his hands. What did he do? He robbed people with his hands. What did he do? He drank alcohol with his hands. And so it is very important that we help our young men develop that emotional vocabulary, because what happens is then when they become men, or when they become men and get older, they still don't know how to articulate their feelings. And so again, going back to what Brother Malcolm teacher said, is that we have to teach our boys, one of those things is to develop this emotional vocabulary. We know that the research says that boys are more responsive or reactionary when girls. If Brother Bari hits me, I'm gonna hit him right back. Sisters, y'all take a little, Dolores, y'all take a little time to come back and deal with your stuff. We are very reactionary. So when I'm working at a school, like for example, I was in Virginia at a psychiatric facility, the only one in the state of Virginia. And when I was there working with some of the most amazing teachers, many of them pulled me to the side and said, it's talking about big medicated incarcerated black men. Many of them said to me, Dr. Shields, most of the young people that are in here, they don't have any mental illness. The schools were unable to engage them. The schools could not help them develop. And I'm not only just talking about black and brown kids, but I'm talking about some of the poor white children as well. And they said to me, many of them shouldn't be here. And so again, as the brother said earlier, this is big business. To incarcerate our children, it is big business. But again, when you have parents, all right, when you have parents that don't understand what it means to get the support for your children early, when a teacher who doesn't understand, and he says to you, Sister Dolores, I think your son needs to be on medication. Now, first of all, brothers in the room, this teacher has no degree, don't understand what this medication does, but because he or she cannot contain or wants to contain his greatness, or he or she cannot teach a lesson that keeps this young man engaged, what I'm going to do then, I'm going to give him the blue pill. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give him the red pill. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give him something. Instead of asking this young genius, instead of asking this young man and his or her mother to say, how do you learn? I'm in about 100 schools across the country. And when I talk to new teachers, I say the first question that you ask these children after you greet them in the words of Sawubona, as you say, I see you, you say, young man or young person, How do you learn? Nobody ever asked me that throughout my life. They made the assumption that I learned like the two other brothers in the room. They made the assumption, Brother David, that I learned like my brother who was really, really sharp. But never once did they ask me about my genius. And so as we talk about engaging our families, we also have to empower as we talk about our young men, we also have to empower our parents to build a team around our children. When I say a team, I want to be real clear. This is what a team is. You write down, and I do this with parents all the time. I said, I want you to write down a format for your. We're talking about our boys. I want to talk with our Black boys, and I want to say, I want you to think about who are the cheerleaders in your son's life. Who are the people, Bari, that's cheering your son on from the sidelines? Who are cheering you on the sideline? Then I want you to, Brother David, I want you to say, who are the referees? Who are the people that hold you accountable when you're not doing what you should be doing, or when you are doing what you're doing? Who are the team players? And then what you do is then you give that to your son or your daughter. My son has a list of all the Black men in my circle who hold me accountable, who can hold me accountable. And if I had a relationship with Brother David and Brother Abari who are in here, my son will have their numbers as well. So if they're struggling with me, they say, Brother Baba Abari, can I call you? My Baba says ... Brother David, can I talk to you? I'm thinking about, dating this young sister. My dad has another perspective. That's what a village is. So my son Mosiah will tell you, I have a list of people who my Baba, who he calls me Baba, who's given me their names. So if I'm saying something he disagrees with, or if I'm saying something that's challenging him, he has other brothers in his circle and women who can also get that balance from. So as we talk to the parents that are out here, build a team around your children, build a village around your children, give them a network. We have on mostly refrigerators, we have all these emergency numbers, but don't give it to them when it's an emergency. Give it to them right now so they can still engage these individuals when they need that support.
That's amazing, amazing. And we talked before about the environment that creates the thoughts, that creates the beliefs, and the beliefs lead to the feelings, and the feelings give those emotions that actually lead to the actions. So getting to the grassroots of all what is thought to be behavioral problems is basically when the burning desire has no outlet, when there's not enough room for kids to grow. And these are children who will be fathers later on. So if they're spoiled in the beginning, how can we expect them to be better off later on? So that's basically where we really need to start. And yes, the environment. But sometimes, I find that our men are really misunderstood, especially even in the home setting. And sometimes, I grew up in a home where my dad was really quiet, but he made sure that we understood him, and we understood his values, and we were able to know that certain things we didn't go near or we don't touch, right? But when it comes to our fathers, and the environment, what can we say sometimes when we realize that they're already marred in terms of their mental health is not at peak? What can people in the home, in their immediate circle do to help? And we had talked earlier about the Mental Health Act, and I know some of them are really dinosaur aged in terms of that, right? Not current at all. But what can we do, even in the home, even some wives, some sisters, what can they do to support the men in terms of their making sure that they're okay and they're taken care of? Because, the thing is, a lot of us men watch men that grew up feeling that have to be macho, and it cannot be said that they're weak in terms of taking care of their mental health. They have that ego somewhere in there. but what can we do, to help them, to help and make sure that it doesn't get to the stage where, you know, the criminalized part of it has to happen. Can you speak to that?
It looked like Brother David is about to chime in.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and chime in.
Yeah.
While I definitely do not have a psychology degree, I do understand certain aspects of just human nature. And one thing that I've done in working with clients and patients is I've made it a concerted effort to meet them where they are. And you'll hear me say this time and time again. Um, it's about understanding their personality and creating a certain level of emotional intelligence to create open communication. So once you gather, enough emotional intelligence as far as how to communicate effectively with that person, I think that that's the one of the first aspects of creating an environment where you can reach that person, where you can communicate to them effectively and help with, engaging, educating, and empower them to move to a whole nother level of life that they may not even realize was possible. But I think that it's just very important. Communication. I always drive communication is a great way to actually start. So, in understanding these Black youth across America, we got to actually be able to communicate with them. So that's where I would start off with.
Awesome. And any other want to chime in?
Well, I would definitely say, there one is, I mean, you bring up a good point. The physical and mental health disparities among Black men are deplorable. Black men experience the worst health outcomes of any other demographic, especially at the age of 45. Black men have a life expectancy that is three years less than white and Hispanic men, and often these things are related to a level of poverty. And so, as we talk about fatherhood, it's very important to talk about our physical and our mental and our spiritual health. I spoke at a funeral in Chicago. My cousin transitioned very, very young. And I asked all the men in the funeral services to stand up if they visited a doctor within the last year. And I could have counted on my hand. How many men did not stand up? Now, when it comes to mental and spiritual health, that thing is very, very important. It's very important for us to move our bodies, because anxiety is kind of hard for anxiety to take up in space in your body when your body is moving. And so when you talk about the health disparities, we have to, one of the things I want the sisters who are in the space listening to encourage your man, your uncle, your father, your grandfather, your cousin, encourage them to go to, as the old hip hop artist said, go see the doctor. Want you to go to the doctor, go check yourself out. We need you here, but we need your whole body here. These things matter, because it's just not enough to discuss fatherhood. It's not enough just to discuss that without talking about our mental and our physical health. Yeah, we could talk about our mental health all day. But again, the reality is we have to get men moving. We create this concept called Quad 4, where we are part of a collective. Let's just say the two brothers are on here, the three of us, and we add another brother. And what it does is that what we do is this, very simple. I'm going to call my brother from Chicago and say, hey, man, when's the last time you got your prostate checked? And you start doing the game back and forth. Well, do you need me to remind you? We created this quad this piece where we can check in on brothers. Brother Dave, let's take a walk around the block. When was the last time you moved? We all as Black men need accountability partners. We need brothers and sisters. We need people to hold us accountable. But again, we got to move our bodies. Every Saturday, my son who's 14 years old, man, I got this brother in the gym. He swear he fit. I got him boxing. And I was like, yeah, a 1 minute. I said, you boxing for 1 minute. I said, but imagine 3 minutes in the ring and somebody hitting you in the head or hitting you in the face. And you're going to tell me that you fit. In your mind, you fit. I said, but your body says something different. And so again, as we talk about mental health, let's be very clear that when you look at the data and the research, people that are fit, people that are moving their body, people that are eating right, people that have a spiritual connection, people that have a partner, people that have animals with them, they live longer. And so again, once we change our minds, then our bodies will follow. You know, I want to say this. My mentor, you all probably know him out of Chicago, Dr. Hakeem Madabouti. Been loving Hakeem my entire life. Hakeem said it this way. He said, when you walk into a Black person's house, there's three things that you should observe. He said, when you walk into the house, you should look at the artwork on the wall. The artwork should be reflective of the people in the house. That's the first thing. The second thing he says, then you should look on the bookshelf. The bookshelf should be reflective of the people who are in the space. So hopefully you got my book on there. Shout out to my book. Thirdly, he said the next thing, brothers, he said, then you open the refrigerator. He said, if that food in that refrigerator is killing you, which is most of the time it is, then you need to eliminate. You need to put food in your body that's going to build you up. So again, brothers, we aren't as young as we used to. So we got to be mindful of what we put in our bodies. We got to be mindful of who we around, the music that we listen to. When you walk into my house, the first thing it says, check your energy at the door, because I don't want you to bring that negative space into here. So we need accountability partners. We need to support one another, and it can start today. One thing I want to ask brothers to do who are listening, I want you to write something called the stop doing list, because we always talking about start doing. In December 31st, I'm going to start doing something. But I want you to write 5 things. I want to talk, brothers, take your pens out. Anybody's listening, write down the 5 things that you need to stop doing that's not serving you well. And then I want you to circle the one that today that you can do, because you might not be able to get to all 5, but you can circle one. And it's something about making a public commitment. So I'm seeing people in the chat. I want you to be courageous enough and say, this is what I need to stop doing right now, because we need to hold each other accountable, because it's unfair to our partners. It's unfair to our children, and it's unfair to our village that we are leaving this planet, leaving our children, and not taking care of ourselves. So when you talk about strategies, there's one right there.
That's amazing, and that's going to take me into the next thing that I was thinking about, the self-care. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge all the people that are watching on our live stream, and thank you for your comments that you're putting in the chat there. But let's just the topic is mental health intervention for Black fathers, and as we have talked about, it starts at the roots. And if we don't take care of the young fathers that are coming up now, there will be no change. So we start there and we continue with the change. But I want to talk a little bit about self-care. And because we are each individuals and we are all responsible for ourselves. So, you know, self-care will play the most important role in any human being's existence. And in my book, my last published book that I talk about 7 steps for mastering the money in your relationship, the first chapter talks about taking care of yourself. And so I want us to speak to that. I probably let David start to talk to the self-care aspect of making sure that you're taking your care of yourself and your mental health. Are you hearing us still, David? Go ahead then, Dr. Cartman.
Okay. I really appreciate the comments from brother David and Dr. Lamar. I really appreciate just the focus on communication, the organizing. I think that we're such a powerful people. We're so brilliant. We genius. Like, we know all of that. I think we're getting out organized though. I think that we have not created the kinds of rituals, the discipline, the structures to do all the things we can talk about on the panel. We're doing lots of panels, and I love it. We're talking about the thing. We need to move towards instituting those things as practice in our communities. And so for self-care, that's a part of it for me. It's prioritizing it and making it a part of your schedule. just like you would work. The things that you say are important to you. So we had these conversations with men. What's important to you? What are your values? You say my being a father is important to me. You say my family is important to me. You say myself is important to me. And then I want to pull out your schedule and see those things represented in your schedule. If you tell me being a father is most important to me, and I ask you when last time you seen your kids and you can't remember, then you lying. There's a disconnect. The things that you say are important to you have to show up in your schedule. They need to be repetitive. They need to be ritualized. And so self-care is that for me. The mental health conversation is that for me. If men need to do that desperately. We gotta organize ourselves. We ain't gotta wait for nobody. Ain't nobody finna come save us. If they did want to come save us, they don't have the tools to do it. Um, and there's something about mental health specifically that has to come from the inside. There's got to be a motivation, a self-driven aspect of it that says, I've decided that I'm worthy enough that I want better for myself, for my children, and saying is one thing, but like scheduling that, gathering my friends, gathering my peers, bringing my sons along, saying that on Saturday morning, this is what we're gonna do. That's the kind of power fathers got that we give away. Everything I do right now, I did because my father put me in the car. He wasn't like, hey, what you feel like doing? Do you want to go to this lecture, this drum class, this art show, this Black History, whatever it was? He was like, just get in the car. That's what we're doing. That ingrained in me a value system that made it so that when he left, I continued to do that work, and now I'm taking my children to the things that my father took me. It was just practice. It was ritual. It was discipline. It was order. It was sequence. It was just what we did. In the same way you can schedule a game, in the same way you schedule practices, we have to schedule moments for self-care, for community care, for literacy, for reading. We got to have book clubs. All this stuff we talking about doing, I don't need no grant for. I don't need nobody to come in and create no opportunities. I don't need no center. I could, in my house, in my living room, get all of my little cousins once a week to come watch documentaries, to come do book clubs, to come do meditation circles. We could do yoga. I don't have to go nowhere for that. I don't even need the therapist for that. I can go to YouTube, just follow somebody, workbook, whatever it is. Like, we have all the tools we need. We don't have the willpower, the discipline, and the structure to enact that in a way that we need to do for our children, for our families. And we say it like we talk a good game. We say, no, I die for my kids. Men say that all the time. I die for my kids, but would not read for their kids, would not eat good vegetables for their kids. Like we not doing the simple stuff, the consistent stuff, the regular everyday kind of stuff. That's what we need. We need to be more organized and support each other and creating those kind of formations in very organic community ways, not waiting for somebody programmed to come do that. Like, we as fathers, everybody has the power to do that in your house, within your collective village, by creating that, making it consistent. Even if the first time boys come and they ho humming, you might create a space and say, how you feeling today? Let's talk. Let's try to create better emotional vocabulary. You might be pulling them along, but by the fifth time, they know you serious. This is gonna be 2 hours, an hour and a half dedicated to just sitting and listening and connecting. Eventually, they're gonna find some words, and they will see you amongst your friends modeling that, and they will appreciate the benefit of redefining what men do on their Saturdays, on their Sundays, on their afternoons, because we will show them this is what men do. This is what it is. We will define manhood by the actions that we demonstrate. Either way, if we show them the men go watch the game, everybody watching the Super Bowl, we show men go. I'm saying, when we gather, there's certain things that we talk about. Then we showing them that. But if we show them something different, then that's what they do. That's what they will be. And again, we got the power for that. And it's got to be enacted. It's got to be, demonstrated. It's got to be manifested. Otherwise, we can be talking about this, forever.
That's amazing. And man, we could go on for hours on this amazing topic, but I'm going to have to lend a minute or and a half or so each for final thoughts. Okay. And before we have to wrap up here. So you're back with us, David. You can go ahead, give some final thoughts on this amazing topic here.
Yeah. So, final thoughts on just taking a look at, Black mental health, and especially in fathers. I think that it's very important that we all note that we have to address one of the most important aspects of what we're addressing is self. self-love, self-awareness, self-empowerment. And just like with, and you hear time and time again, if you're on an airplane and the cabin pressure should change, and that's your environment, and that oxygen mask drops down, what do you do first? You secure your mask first before you attempt to help anyone else out. And I think that we have to understand that as fathers, as Black men, and as we begin to address Black mental health matters, we have to take a look at ourselves holistically. There's no one dimension to us. We're not three-dimensional, we're actually six-dimensional. So we have to take a look at our spiritual wellness. We have to take a look at our physical wellness, our intellectual wellness, our emotional wellness, our social wellness, and our occupational. That one thing that brings in the financial stability that we're looking at. I mean, people can say that money doesn't matter, but I'm like, you show me a person without money, and I'll show you a person with tons of problems and, unhappy person. So, we have to understand that there are six dimensions to wellness. And once we begin addressing all those, you create a better person. And in creating a better person, you create a better world. And so those are my final thoughts. Appreciate everyone. I'm glad I could chime in. Um, Ms. Dolores, back to you.
Mm.
And Dr. Shields, your final thoughts?
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity for being in space with such strong brothers who know who they are and know whose they are and know their purpose. The great poet Rumi said, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself." I talk and lecture on self-care all day long. For the next 3 weeks, I'm working with every other week. I'm working with 250 of the most underpaid, some of the most overlooked, some of the superheroes. They're called social workers and child welfare workers. And so they brought me in to talk about self-care for those who care for others, because you can't give what you don't have. So I want to talk about winning the morning. If you win the morning, you win the day. I love to give strategies. So these are my winning rituals in the morning. Number one, I always make my bed, because making my bed is like a walking meditation. Number two, I meditate and pray. I sit there and I'm grateful for my ancestors. I'm grateful for all of my family members, because that time is peaceful for me, that I need to do that before I do anything else. I don't grab my phone, because when I grab my phone, you grab your phone first thing in the morning, you're responding to all the stuff, meaning that you are giving up your sovereignty. Number three, I have a reflection journal. I take time and reflect on the night or the days before, then I move versus working out. Like the brother said, these strategies, you don't have to go and get a gym membership or a Peloton to pay some extra money. And then finally, I eat a healthy whole meal. And I have some motivational music, my power list. I want people to move away from doing and being. I get sick and tired of people say, when I get older, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to write not a do list. I want you to write a to be list. This week I'm going to be mindful. This week I'm going to be helpful. This week I'm going to take care of myself. So my morning routines, I'm gonna say it again, making my bed, that's my walking meditation. I meditate and pray. I have a reflection journal. I move versus working out, and then I eat a healthy meal. And meditation has saved my life. It has saved my life, and it can do the same for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Dr. Cartman, your final thoughts?
Just also, just want to remind us to do this on our own terms, in our own way. That we ain't got to go to nobody else's philosophies, no other people for this information. We the first people on the planet, so we've been asking these questions for centuries. We're trying to figure out how to be our best selves, how to be human, how to be good fathers, and so we have a long archive, a deep well of wisdom to draw from. So that's what we want to remind us to tap into that, to go study the ancients, to study the sacreds, the indigenous. We got practices that were taken from us. We got to bring those back into our conversations and rituals around wellness. So I just wanted to remind us to center that we got power, that we got genius, that we're talking about, the trauma in our blood and our DNA, and we also got genius in our DNA. But the environment that we create extracts one and quells the other. But all that has to be deliberate and intentional. We got everything we need to make that work. So the time is ours, and the work is ours too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been amazing. And you never know. Don't be surprised if you get called back for a part two. I see Dr. Washington joining in there. It's such an amazing,
In,
amazing
Indeed,
conversation.
amazing conversation. I want to thank everybody for being here, being a part of this conversation to talk about the dynamics of Black mental health for Black men. Thank you, Dolores, for holding it down. Thank you, Dr. Shields, for coming, the author of Chaos, what he learned as an Ubuntu teacher. Thank you, Dr. Bari Cartman, for coming and sharing your genius and wisdom about the issue of manifest man, Black manhood. And you shared powerful words about how we impart, how we can begin to ingrain within the minds of our children who they are by having certain rituals and practices that can transform their thinking and thoughts. And Dr. Rochelle, thank you so much. I call you Dr. Rochelle, one of my former students, and Brother Shields, he's also a Grambler Knight. So big shout out to GSU as well. And so this brother has developed a program called Healthy Fit, and it's about getting the body right, getting the body in order. And we need to think about this. So, Dolores, I encourage us to have a follow up with this entire process, to have some directives, some steps that we can engage in. As Dr. Carpenter says, what is it that we can do? And so you all laid down the foundation for some things that we can think about, and we will have to have a part two where we expand this conversation to have some actionable steps, how we can have the 6 dimensions. David, say those 6 dimensions again so that we can grab those. I was able to capture, Dr. Shields, I know that we're over time, but will you say those 6 dimensions one more time for us so we can get those 6 dimensions that you mentioned?
Yeah, the 6 dimensions of wellness are spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and occupational.
And we will come back to that. Dolores, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you all
Okay.
for being a part of Black Mental Health Matters. Thank you, Daniel, for organizing this organization. And Dolores, thank you for the work that you're doing. I am out. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. And in closing, just to remember that we are a royal priesthood, a holy nation created in the image of the Most High, who communicates with us only from within. So anything outside of us is not from Him. So I appreciate Black Mental Health Matters for the outreach that they have done, and the collaboration and the communication in terms of bringing us together to support mental health. Thank you so much, gentlemen, once more, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you to our audience, and thanks for everyone for participating and take talk, walk good. We say in Jamaican terms, we say walk good. Take care.